When it begins, there's so many questions.
And so much potential.
A lot of ideas.
A lot to say, and more often than not,
It isn't so much what we say,
but how we say it.
So when that spark of inspiration hits,
our creative energies drive us forward.
And in a world where every decision counts,
our choices matter.
Line,
form,
function.
All the elements come together in balance,
expressed in their simplest, truest form.
And in that moment,
when an idea becomes something real,
it opens the door
to new possibilities. Xencelabs.
Hi, I'm Glen Southern. I'm a digital artist based in the UK in a county called Cheshire. So I'm here today looking at a little project that I did with a digital sculpting a Spinosaurus. And I'm using some amazing equipment from a company called Xencelabs, who are sponsoring this session today. Now, Xencelabs have got a graphic tablet into the marketplace, which is a pro level offering, and it's really, really good kit. It really does help me with my approach to art, which is very much just not allowing the equipment to get in my way, making sure that the equipment just is there for me and responds to what I need. I do a lot of VR. I do a lot of concept work that's for TV, game, film, all sorts of odd creations pass through my doors in my studio. I run a small company called Southern GFX, and the spread of the kind of work that I do and we do, because I run a small team, it can be quite mind-blowing, really, the scope of what we do, from creatures to characters to named things like this one on screen now, which is Jurassic World, the opening titles for Fallen Kingdom. We might have to sculpt or create just the craziest things. So it really matters to me that I have hardware that can just keep up and just keep delivering. And today, this project that I'm going to look at is a good example of how that works for me. My background is generally all art, with a little bit of management skills and training in there as well. But I specialise in digital sculpting and have done since the late 90s when ZBrush came along. So I've trained it for 21 years. I've used it commercially for 21 years. So it's a big part of my life. And how we interact with ZBrush is one of the things that really is something that's really close to my heart. So I've worked with a lot of companies that make hardware for interacting like this, and I obviously use a lot of different software, whether it's ZBrush or Cinema 4D, and now more recently on the iPad I do a lot of work with a piece of software called Nomad Sculpt. But we're here today to talk about how I use Xencelabs equipment on projects like this one, where I would have to make a full-size creature, in this case a large dinosaur, and I've probably spent a lot of this year making this kind of creatures, because we've had a few projects into the studio that have been related to creatures of that size. We don't specialize specifically in any one type of creature, but if what I generally find is if one job comes along, then it can lead to two or three more, and that's something that's happened here. Is that we've done a couple of these sort of creations with Xencelabs, done this kind of like Triceratops looking creature, and then I moved on to doing a lot of dinosaurs for a course that I was running, and then all of the time using this new equipment by Xencelabs. So it all ends up with 3D print with me usually. So we test it, even if we don't sell 3D models as such, but a lot of our clients like to see the final products. This is, you can see here, this is in Blender. So this is one of the first things I did with Xencelabs, and this is just me testing how powerful Blender would be with these kind of models and this kind of level of sculpting. I actually used a piece of software there called Instant Meshes, which is free, just to get that retopology there. So I was testing a few bits of software at the same time. Now we do use Blender. It's an interesting part of this conversation actually. Now my core is ZBrush, but Blender's grown to such a state now and a position in the industry where you can't really ignore it. And I do use it for some polygon modeling and a little bit of sculpting. So I draw a lot of my own concepts. So this is how a thing would start in our studio. Is I generally sketch it or rough it out with at least a pencil sketch of some kind, if not straight onto the PC or onto the iPad. And then I would do something like this. So we've just grabbed some reference here for this Spinosaurus. There are all kinds of different theories on how a Spinosaurus moved in its environment, whether it be swimming or wading or go all the way back to Jurassic Park where you'd see the big running Spinosaurus. So on this particular project I researched a lot online, and I just decided to go for the swimming one, simply because a friend of mine, Julian Johnson Mortimer, you might want to look his work up because he's phenomenal, does a lot of work for National Geographic and those kind of programs. He's been doing a lot of swimming Spinosaurus in the last few years, so that kind of influenced me a lot to try something like this. So I dived straight into ZBrush, set up my references, use the references that I've got offline if needed, certainly for the initial anatomy of bones and the layout of the anatomy before I get to muscles. I would quite often look at the bone structure. And then I'd move into this kind of thing, which is blocking out and doing what we would call the primary form. So I'm just literally taking a couple of tools really. So I didn't use Z-spheres on this project, which is how I would normally start if I'm in ZBrush. I just literally blocked it out from a couple of normal spheres and just stretched it and pulled it and then ended up with the initial shape to sculpt on. So I then go into, as I just said, primary forms. So that they're the big shapes that make up the creature. And in this bit, I'm detailing a little bit there. I'm going into what we call secondary forms, but that's because I'm quite confident with the subject matter. But I'd already made a decision to keep the jaw separate. As you can see, it highlights differently in ZBrush. And then I just work my way down the body to start adding the big muscle groups down the neck and down into the chest area. And the reference that I'm using is at this point really is my own. So I drew a lot during this, and I learnt a lot. And as I learnt more about the creature and about how different sculptors had sculpted it or drawn it or done concept art for it, then I kind of evolved the design as I went along. This is where a graphic tablet of this nature, like the Xencelabs tablet, really helps me. So I configure a lot of my keys for these jobs. So Xencelabs have this thing called a quick keys remote, and it's really, really cool because it's got a graphic interface on it, and you can configure multiple setups for your different programs. And that's a big benefit to me because shortcuts are everything. That's where my comment about good kit comes in, is that I have to have kit that doesn't get in my way. It has to really stand up to the test of being able to do this in production in a live environment with pressure of getting stuff done. I can't be stopping and messing with drivers. I can't really take the time to go and try a different setup. I have to have this up and running because time's premium to me. What you can see me doing there is I'm still on primary forms, so I'm using my own sketch reference now. I'd got the block out from an online reference, and now I've gone into one where I've done the research, I've done the sketching, I've decided the look that I want, however scientifically inaccurate that is. I'm not qualified to say, but it's definitely a contentious creature. To start a Spinosaurus I don't recommend anyone doing it, simply because there is so much scientific evidence that there's papers out this year that say that it was much more of a wading creature than a swimming creature. So you can be designing something one year and it seems like it's completely redundant, the design the next year. But that's good because it makes us evolve as sculptors and designers. So you can see me going back over my old work there. So I went back over the sculpting of the jaw, and I had a rethink about the shape of that big muscle coming down the side of the cheek. And then obviously, like a crocodilian or like a lot of lizards, the jaw muscles for these kind of creatures are on the inside, and you have to really think about those kind of things when you're designing. You can't go and if you put a jaw muscle on the outside of that mouth and you didn't have that skin flap in the corner, it doesn't read well. People know that you're not looking at proper reference or thinking about your reference. Worked on the fin there quite a little bit. Again, I'm using a lot of shortcuts here. So one of the big powerful things in programs like ZBrush, I know a lot of sculpting programs, Blender the same, Nomad on the iPad. The big thing is learning how to mask. And being able to access your basic controls like Shift, Alt, Control, Space, they're all a sequence of keys that really matter when you're doing masking, because you might be using just the Shift to snap it, then Alt to invert it, Space to move the mask, and it's really crucial that the equipment supports how you want to hold your hand ergonomically. This Quick Keys remote by Xencelabs is great because of the how configurable it is. Getting into the habit of doing primary and secondary and tertiary forms is really crucial. So one of the big things I see with a lot of students is where people start to get into detail well before they've established any of the correct proportions, the length of the body, the length of the legs, the length of the limbs. And you can see me doing it a little bit here, where I've gone ahead and I'm putting more detail in now on this fin, and yet there's no feet. And that comes with, it comes with time where you kind of know, I feel like all my body proportions are in now, and I know the length of all my fingers because of my concept art, so I'm not that bothered that I'm actually going into muscle work now. I'm well into probably, all of the primary forms were laid down, and now I'm well into the tertiary. Really, I'm really going for I'm adding bigger muscle groups. I'm adding the overall shape is well defined, and you can see me changing the shape here. And that's because I brought in this coloured reference, which is I just enhanced the sketch that I had. I just painted over it basically, and that just gave me a little bit more of a feel of where the counter shading's going to be. And that the counter shading is where you see it on a lot of fish and lizards. It's where the underside is light and the upper side is dark, and it's an evolutionary trait that it works whether it be fish or reptiles on land. Is that if someone's looking up at you in the water, for example, that having a light underside gives you a bit more protection, and looking down in the water is the same. It's the reverse, so it's dark, so people, creatures aren't going to get eaten as often if they're protected, and then the evolutionary pressures to do that lead to things called counter shading. So that's the kind of stuff you should be looking at and learning about while you're doing these kind of projects. Started to think about, even though I still haven't on the feet at this point, I started to think about the laying down the osteoderms, or the spikes on the back, or scoops as they're called in dinosaurs. And then obviously popped in a couple of eyes to make sure I've got, one of the next things to do is sculpt the volumes around the eyeball. So I made that, the eyeball helps me to do that. Now the next big challenge then is the teeth, and it's very simple and quite repetitive actually. So I just used a sphere, as you saw. I just used the sphere that I'd used for the eye actually, pulled it down, smoothed it, shaped it. Then I'll go into solo mode just to make sure that one's looking the right sort of shape compared to my reference, and then duplicate, scale, rotate. I'm not massively worried about the positioning in and out, so the Z position. You can see me there just adjusting it. At the initial stage I was just getting one of everything, and because they're all separate teeth, they're just being duplicated, then I can just move them. I very quickly in this project I merged them together, but just doing this layout now, it's not a problem just to keep them as separate subtools. And that's one thing that ZBrush is really good for, is that ability to keep your model segmented either in subtools, or you can keep it keep it either in subtools or in polygroups. So, you know, if it's in polygroups, then it, you know, it just makes it easy to select it as you need it. So the upper teeth, you can see they're all out of line. So if you know, I just went underneath, snapped it to the top, and then just brought them all into the correct line. And that really helps then to then build the muscles and build the skin around the lips and around the, you know, the well, basically the scale work and the scoots around that, you know, the upper mandible, and then that front bit there, just in front of the nose, first in front of the eye, sorry, is the it's called the fenestra, and basically it's high on a Spinosaurus, or when I say high, it's close to the eye socket, and then the nostril is pulled right back, which is one of the clues that these creatures, they could possibly be wading predators, because if they were like a crocodile or an alligator, then the nostril would be at the end, so they could stick it out of the water, whereas these have it higher up, much more like a heron or something that dips its beak or its jaw into the water. So it means that they can breathe while they're you know, having their, you know, they're dipping their weapons into the water. So you learn a lot of this when you're researching a creature, and I you know, it's a passion of mine, like making sure I know enough about it. And as I say, when you're doing a project like this, you kind of don't realize how much you're going to learn, because I now wouldn't do this. I wouldn't do the creature in the same way that I did it here. I would research it more as a wading creature. But I didn't know that when I started it, really. I learned that in the literature as I was going along. So just realigning the teeth there again, as I did with the top. And then basically I just have to duplicate those across to get my full set. So merge them together, and then basically pick each one, merge them together, and then maybe usually I just do one polygroup for the top and one polygroup for the bottom. But there I'm just adjusting the jaw a little bit to make sure it again, none of these teeth are sticking out. Quick use of mirror. I use an interface there. You can see I configure. It's another reason that I like configurable configurable hardware, because it you know, I have a very configured interface, which makes ZBrush a lot simpler to use. It's quite difficult for new users out of the box. So if you have it all configured to work for you, and you've got your keys, and it's all working correctly in, you know, in a quick way, that's a huge benefit. It just speeds you up a lot. So quickly bashed out the fingers based on one of the teeth spikes, and that evolved into a hand. And then now I'm going back and adding, basically merging together the hands and the front. You notice I'm only doing one side, and it doesn't really matter. Most of the time I just work like this, and then I just merge it across. I just mirror it across, and that gives me the ability to just focus on. I don't worry about having it all symmetrical all the time, because ZBrush just fixes that with a click of a button, and I have it there on the interface right at the top, because I use mirror and weld, it's called, all the time. So putting some big muscle details there in the wrist. Again, I've gone too far. I wouldn't advise people going as far as I've gone there without, getting that anatomy right first. And then the arms are very human-like on this one, probably too much if I'm honest with you. But I do like that really bulky chest with quite big biceps. They weren't. This particular dinosaur is definitely a swimming one, because that's what I chose to do. But those front limbs couldn't support their weight fully. Which means that they were bipedal, which for a creature that's this top heavy, they weren't running around on those back legs. It was definitely a much more likely that they were a wader. So this swimming one, a little bit of a stretch really, and it's based on a paper from a few years earlier than the one that I referenced earlier. And it does talk about the thickness of the tail being like a newt, or a much more like something that powers through the water like a crocodile, meaning it's fatter at the base, and it's got a really good powerful stroke that forces it through the water at some speed. But the paper that followed it kind of disputed that a little bit. So, you know, there is all sorts of conflicting evidence as you go through these kind of things. So now I'm on to you can see me there just doing a quick check of the volume again. It just felt like it had lost it a little bit and gone a bit too thin in places. So I was bulking up the chest, bulking up the thighs, and then that tail is just straight out. So I wanted to do more work on that. But we're getting the look now. We're getting to the point where, you know, I know those hands were added late, but it hasn't impacted what I was doing at all, and just needs to now be refined after this stage. So the bulk of the creature at this point is already there. It's a few hours worth of work already there, but again, it's quite. I find it quite cathartic to be doing this kind of work where I'm working out a muscle, and, you know, I'm going and looking at reference off screen. You can't see it here, using my own reference that I've used off other references. So there's a lot going on. It's not just a passive sit there and sculpt. You know, unless you know all of these muscles inside out, then you've got to be going and looking and referencing, you know, the feet, and do they have 4 toes or 5 toes, and, you know, that's what I did here. Actually, I realised there was a toe missing, based on the archaeological, based on the fossils that we've got. So I popped in that extra toe. Now that should have been picked up earlier, so that's the kind of error I'm talking about. You know, if you'd have done all your UV work and done all of the unwrapping and all of that, and you find this kind of thing out, it's really frustrating. So, you know, being prepared, you know, what's the old saying, measure twice, cut once. So it's, you know, I wasn't doing it here. So it was just lucky I caught it when I did. So you can see there that little digit sticking out the side, and it just gives it that little bit of reality. Just, you know, it just definitely makes it feel like you've understood the creature a bit more, which is obviously makes it much more believable, and whoever's looking at it can feel like they believe that it's a real creature. So I'm using a grey mat cap there. I normally change my mat cap a lot more so that I can try different lighting scenarios. So I'm not changing lights or anything like that. I'm just changing the mat cap, which is it's called a mat cap because it's material capture, and it's just all the lighting baked into one environment map, and it just fakes the lighting on your model so you can see the volume really well. There I'm using Dam Standard, which is a very famous brush. It's been used, made by a guy called Damien, and I just use it inverted. So I just hit one of my keys and just inverts it. I think it's Alt, and it gives me like an instant vein, as you can see there. And now on to some of the we're well off the secondary forms now, and we're getting into surface detailing, not the really detailed stuff. We're just looking at the muscle groups at this point, and just trying to work out that I've got them all right. Now we've got one of everything. That means all the digits, all of the toes. Then basically what I do is I duplicate, I make a Z-remeshed low-res mesh, and then that becomes the new base mesh. I then project all the detail from the high res one onto that low res one. I subdivide it, project again, subdivide it, project again. So it keeps the mesh getting closer and closer to the look of the high poly one. It can take a few minutes if you've got a really high resolution model. You can see there, it can definitely take a minute to get that done. But when that's done, it means you're working with a low poly and a high poly whenever you want. So you can literally just basically you can just go up and down the resolution as you see fit. Now on to the final details. So we got to the point now where we've got the low poly, as I say, so we know we can pose it simply because we've got that low poly. And now I loaded in a huge collection of skin alphas that I made as part of a course. So I made a whole pack of 50 skins for like crocodiles and dinosaurs and dragons and anything that needs scales. So you can see there on the left, that's all my alphas. And then using the standard brush and a drag rectangle, I then just bring out the scales as they're needed. And this is one of my favourite bits actually, because I'm getting really into the detail of the skin now, and then smoothing it down and reapplying it and trying different shapes, and where's the skin got wrinkles, where's it got pores, where's it got really big scales, where's it got small scales. And it's, you know, it looks like it's really quick, but obviously this is, you know, time ramped. But I'm really just trying to get the look right now. That this will all come out in the 3D print, so I've got to be thinking about how much detail to put in, and thinking about that, you have to put extra detail in, because now I'm ready to export it. I've exported it to a program called Chitubox. If you haven't put enough detail in, it's not going to come out in the print at all. I chopped it into 3 or 4 pieces. This is a whole video in itself, just doing the prep for a print. Hollowed it out in Chitubox, and that makes it basically so I can put supports on it, and then it's print ready. And then I just went to the next stage, which is sending it to my Peopoly Phenom, which is it's a huge resin printer. It's a company called Peopoly, and the model is Phenom, and it uses obviously really cool resin. You can see it there. This one was a print fail. On the right there, there's where it fell down. It did save, but it was a fail overall. And then that's the final print. And I used, as I say, mostly ZBrush. And Peopoly Phenom was the printer, and all of it pretty much was done on the Xencelabs latest tablet. So check them out and have a look at their amazing new tablet and the new remote that they've got. And try this kind of project work yourself. I'm still a fan of the tablets, as well as it's one of my favourite ways of sculpting. And obviously the results that you get are quite phenomenal these days. This is something like a production model that it would have taken me a lot longer, and it would have, I wouldn't have got this kind of finish without the kind of hardware that I've got now. So the kit is everything to me. The right tablet, the right printer, the right software for slicing. There's a lot goes into it, but it's well worth it.
Hello, I'm Akin. I am a multimedia artist from Hong Kong.